So on Thursday, we had a record breaking 77,255 cases of coronavirus, shattering the previous record of 67,000. Cases are skyrocketing across the country in Florida, Texas, and in South Carolina, and Republicans seem absolutely incompetent to be able to do anything about it. Chris, I was looking at these numbers and I was shocked, absolutely shocked at how the numbers are completely skyrocketing. The craziest thing of
Right.
all, of course, is, it was April. It was April and March when everybody was like, we need to shut down, we need to shut down, we need to shut down.
Right.
And 40,000 cases seemed like a disaster. 40,000 cases seemed like, well, we must be at the pinnacle of it. Now we're almost double that.
Right. Yeah, my thoughts were the same as yours. I went back to remember the 15 days to slow the spread that Trump was talking about. And back then they were saying that if we do the right things, we'll have between 100,000 and 200,000 deaths during the whole pandemic. We're now well above that. I saw a projection today that if things don't go well, we could be talking by the end of the year, not the end of the pandemic, but the end of the year, they were predicting 800,000 deaths. So,
Oh
we're
my
in a
God.
situation where, what have we really done from the federal government? When Trump is asked, he says, well, early on we shut down travel to China, which is kind of a half measure, and it's really only half true anyways. But besides that, what has really been done? It's been a force to reopen, and the scientists are on the other side saying, nope, bad idea, don't reopen. If we do this, everything's going to fall apart. And we're seeing exactly what the scientists predicted. So at what point do we start listening to those scientists and make decisions based on what those scientists are saying?
Well, we heard the White House just the other day come out and say that the scientists shouldn't stand in the way of school reopening, that
Right,
science shouldn't stop
right,
school reopening. And look, obviously science isn't the only guide to morality, but nonetheless, if we want to have a productive society, we've got to listen to the scientists. We have to listen to the medical experts and take them absolutely seriously. Take them absolutely seriously when we're looking at these projections and looking at these numbers. It is a situation right now where the only thing that they seem to care about is reopening the economy. That's the only
right.
solution that they had. There was a moment, Chris, in maybe about a month ago when it looked like maybe they were going to take things seriously, and also it looked like maybe there was going to be an infrastructure package. Donald Trump talking about having an infrastructure package, but
Right.
Republicans balked at the price tag. Mitch McConnell balked at the price tag, and now now Republicans are starting to see that come back to bite them. I was looking at this new Gallup poll that came out just the other day, and it shows how Americans are now identifying less and less with the Republican Party. Just a few months ago
Right.
in January, after the failures with impeachment, the majority of Americans by a 2-point margin were identifying with the Republican Party. It really looked like Donald Trump was going to come in for re-election. In fact, possibly even by a pretty large margin. But now, by a massive 50 to 39-point gap, Americans are identifying with the Democratic Party. Republicans have really shot themselves in the foot with their absolute inability to flex around their doctrine a little bit, to ask questions of, well, okay, maybe at this point government spending is warranted. They couldn't do that. Their dogmas were too inflexible, and they couldn't change their mind at all. And again, now it looks like it's coming back to bite them.
Yeah, and they've already said if there's going to be another round of stimulus, that it needs to include a tax cut for the wealthy, right? So we're just, we'll give a few crumbs to the normal actual people, and then we'll give a huge tax cut to the rich. And it's that dogma coming in. They cannot let it go. They can't move away from it long enough to even save human lives.
Yeah, it's like we did see it actually. You were absolutely right. We saw them just a couple days come out saying that they wanted to do a tax cut, that was their solution to get the economy roaring back up again. Tax cuts are not the only solution to things, guys. It
Right.
really isn't. Even like mainstream economists who may be leaning right on many issues will look at that and say, well, hold on, tax cuts may work in certain scenarios, but they don't work in other scenarios. And for Republicans to think that, oh, well, that's the only way that things work really goes to show you how economics has been weaponized as a moralistic sort of stick that, oh, well, you don't understand economics.
Right.
You don't understand economics. Now, Chris, the other interesting thing is the way in which the White House is now redirecting the CDC data to the HHS. Do you think that this means that they're going to be cooking the books, or what does this really mean?
I don't know if they're actually going to cook the books. It wouldn't surprise me at all if we find out that they did cook the books, right? I wouldn't be surprised, but I think even if they don't cook the books, it's not going to go well. They're switching a very complicated way of tracking things in the middle of a pandemic, and I think the numbers that come out for the next 6 to 8 weeks are going to be screwy because people on both ends Right now, people have been trained in the current system, right? These are experts who know what they're doing. Now we're moving over to an untested system that people are going to have to learn the new ways of dealing with that new system. And I think it's going to be used to justify smaller numbers because a lot of times if you take a measurement, people blindly trust that measurement. But if your measurement is flawed because people aren't able to submit data, then the numbers are going to come in low. And on top of that, I would not be surprised at all to find out at some later date that yes, the numbers were being suppressed because we've already seen that at the state level. And they're going to find reasons to say, oh, well, we didn't include people that had other issues showing up with the virus. Or, they're going to find ways to trim that number down and to the ones that they can't get away with claiming and say, okay, these are the people who actually died of COVID and not count these other like issues where the people probably died of COVID and stuff like that. So I just don't have a whole lot of confidence that these numbers coming out are going to be accurate.
Right. I think best case scenario, even if they're entirely honest in, trying to be transparent, at the end of the day, the reason why they did this flip is because they know that the confusion will mean lower numbers. I really do think that this is a disaster, and not just a disaster. I think this is again, what we're seeing for the Trump administration across the board, which is this is a step towards authoritarianism, right? I'm going to control the data. I'm going to control the numbers. That is authoritarian. This is the kind of thing that you see in other countries, and then America criticizes it, and then maybe even uses it as a reason to invade or a reason to, pass embargoes or sanctions on a various country on other countries. This is truly outrageous. I'm actually disgusted by this. Truly disgusted.
And Trump gives away the game when he says we need to do less testing because then our numbers are going to go down, because that makes it very clear what the numbers mean to him. It doesn't mean the number of Americans dying of COVID is going down. It means the number of reported cases that make him look bad going into a re-election are not good. Right. So that's clearly his goal. It's not a concern for American citizens. It's a concern for the number that's going to make him look bad when he's trying to get votes here in a few months.
Exactly. It goes back to that Gallup poll. It goes back to the fact that Republicans are looking like they're going to get clobbered in the election coming up. These numbers right now that we're seeing, we just saw a Quinnipiac poll showing Joe Biden with a 15-point lead over Donald Trump. Now, I don't know that that specific number is going to hold, but the numbers that we're seeing overall in the aggregator to have Joe Biden up a 10-point lead, we are looking at a landslide, the likes of which at least I haven't seen in my lifetime. I mean, even if the numbers were to get chopped down to 7-point lead, I mean, that's a complete landslide. We're looking at a situation, even at 7 points, where it's likely that the Senate could flip. And with Joe Biden now talking about how he may get rid of the filibuster, it brings in an interesting situation. It really does. It brings in an interesting situation. Right now is definitely a time to be paying attention to politics. And, the last thing that I want to bring up here is the way in which governors, such as Brian Kemp, for instance, are talking about overriding local ordinances when it comes to masks. You'd think, right? You would think, Chris, that Republicans are going to start looking at the data and think, okay, well, the only way we might be able to turn things around is if we start taking this thing super, super seriously till November. And then Brian Kemp comes around and says to the Atlanta mayor, you can't even require mask wearing if you want to.
Right. Yeah, and who wants to be remembered for that, right? When history rolls around, do you want to be the person that made sure that less people were wearing masks and then people died because of it? Is that what you want to be remembered for? Because that's what you'll be remembered for.
Yeah, and it's bizarre to me because, there was a moment, and I actually talked about it on my channel, that like maybe a week and a half ago, we did start to see a bunch of Republicans come out talking about how important it is to wear a mask. We still see Mitch McConnell talking about, I think just 2 days ago, saying it's important to wear a mask. So a number of Republicans are saying that it's important to wear a mask, and we did see Brian Kemp say the same thing, saying that it's important to wear a mask. But then when it comes to taking the next step to saying, well, you're not allowed to go in businesses unless you're wearing a mask, they're not willing to take that next step. So it's all just talk. Right. It's not any action behind it. And I think this is going to be the downfall to Republicans. Again, it goes back to this inflexible ideology. It's the same thing when it came to their unwillingness to invest in to have any kind of infrastructure investment. It goes back to the same thing in which, the only things they can talk about is tax cuts. Well, they're not actually willing to tell businesses, look, you're not allowed to bring anyone in unless they're wearing a mask. They're not actually willing to take that next step in order to keep people safe. And that's why the American people are rejecting the Republican Party right now. It's because they were too inflexible. It's because a challenge met them and they weren't willing, they weren't able to change around their views just a little bit, just around the edges, so that they could meet the moment. All right, Chris, thanks so much for joining us. Guys, go check out Chris's channel. He's got a new logo. He's got all kinds of fresh stuff, new thumbnails out there, fresh stuff. Go click the link down in the description to check out his channel. All right, we'll see you all in the next one.